Hello and welcome to the Lifting the Iceberg podcast. My name is Tyler James Berger, and on this episode, I sit down with Zak Ferentz. Zak is a singer, songwriter, guitarist, motivational speaker, and frontman of the band Ferentz and the Felons. Zak and I break down his song Hudson County line by line, and by doing so, we talk about his life story, the lessons he's learned from the darkest times of his life, and how he rose from the darkness in his past to become the person he is now. Please give his song Hudson County a listen before listening to this podcast. It can be found on YouTube, Spotify, or anywhere you get your music. I'll also have a link to it in the show notes on liftingtheiceberg.com. Now, let's lift the iceberg with Zak Ferentz. I'm sitting here with Zak Ferentz of Ferentz and the Felons, and thanks for being here, man.
Yeah, man, definitely.
I'm really excited to talk to you about your song Hudson County.
Cool.
And this conversation really is the exact kind of conversation that I've been looking forward to have with this podcast, where I'm not just interviewing an artist, but I'm interviewing an artist on a specific piece of art.
Cool.
And for you, being a musician, I want to talk to you about one of my favorite songs of yours, Hudson County.
Cool.
And I also think that this song is kind of really emblematic of your journey and just your story of who you are. And I think it's going to be a good jumping off point to get into some good discussion.
That's like, that. You know, it's cool because that song, I knew in my heart it was going to be the single.
Mm-hmm.
I knew that because when I was a child, like growing up, I always wanted to be a musician, but I was caught in this like heavy metal world.
Mm-hmm.
But I knew in my heart I wanted to be this like singer, songwriter, kind of like folk Americana kind of artist. And I always wanted to name my first project Hudson County. What's funny is I wrote that song in like 15 minutes. That's just like off the rip.
Yeah.
And I actually went back to the studio to put that song on.
Yeah. What led up into that 15 minutes? You know, like, was there some kind of moment that just put you into a flow state where that thing just came out of you?
You know, I was jamming with my drummer, Matt, and my bass player, Rob, and I kind of had this chord progression, and I just kept playing it. And I just kept saying, like, maybe I'm crazy, maybe I'm true.
Mm-hmm.
Not maybe I'm true, I'm sorry. Maybe I'm crazy, maybe it's true.
Mm-hmm.
And that was all I had.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I went home, because that's like my safe place, I have this room in my apartment where it's dedicated to me creating art and like going to work. It's kind of like an office / like, you know, creation space.
Mm-hmm.
And I just picked up an acoustic and I started strumming the chords. And I actually put myself in a mindset years prior to that, you know, moment where I did leave Hudson County and I moved out to this, you know, strange place called Montauk out on Long Island. So that when people say like, what the hell, you said you're going to leave, you're like still here. Well, that was like, that song was based on a mindset I had, you know, almost 10 years ago.
Yeah.
I guess I just thought about all the at the time, you know, it was a lot of stuff going on in my life where like I needed clarity on my upbringing and I needed clarity on like my the experiences I had with my parents and my family. So I think that's what that song was, truthfully, you know?
Yeah. It's you kind of like, even though, I mean, you still live in Hudson County right now, you know?
Yeah.
So even though you're not necessarily leaving Hudson County as of yet, it's still, I think, a symbolic articulation of your past in Hudson County that you're leaving behind, even though you might not be leaving the geographical area of Hudson County. There's a certain symbolic element to that place that you're leaving in your past. And I mean, so first thing I want to ask you, just the name Ferentz and the Felons. What's your story behind that? Are you a felon? And what happened?
So I've been arrested. I had a situation where I got jammed up for aggravated assault. I was a very violent child.
Yeah.
I was very violent into my like adolescence and even into like my early adult, you know, years. I've probably been in like 300 physical altercations on the street. I couldn't even count. The felon thing comes, yes, I have been arrested. Yes, I have been charged with felony charges. So the felon thing comes with, it's like everybody I knew growing up was a felon. Or everyone I knew. This is the true story. I lived in a public housing complex, and across the hall from me was this guy who was kind of like, I was always looking for like a guy to like be like a mentor. And there was this guy that lived across the hall, and I started making money with him. I used to steal PlayStation games from the Blockbuster for him for a price. I'd make some money. So
you were just the middleman.
I was just the middleman. I was, he
took all the risk.
He would give me a list of games, and me and my buddies would go steal them, and we would make our money, because my mother was, struggling financially and had a severe,
well, he definitely
addiction.
Wasn't selling them back to GameStop because they would have given him like 10 cents a game.
10 cents for he was playing them. He was
okay.
He was
playing them.
He was a drug dealer in the building, and he had all types of cash money on him. So, side note. So he taught me a lot of stuff. And one night we were just hanging out, and he said he goes, we're all in these buildings for the same reason. We're all like, we're either addicts or we're selling or we're hustling and it just made me think of like, damn, my whole life I'm kind of surrounded by these like what society would label criminals. I just think of them as people, and they're part of their environment, and they've adapted to it. And so I said, it's funny. I want to speak for those people. So Ferentz and the Felons isn't the band. When people think like the Felons are the band, no, the Felons are all of us. So you're a felon as a fan. He's a felon. Like, everyone, everyone around me or that's part of it or that believes in it is a felon to me. And it's cool because I think even in a way, when how you and I met, you're a felon in my eyes because you're against society standards. And that's what I appreciate. I appreciate the people that, let's go below the iceberg like we're doing today,
Yeah.
So that's what felons means to me, just somebody goes against the grain.
Yeah, for sure. I want to get into this idea of a toxic environment and like an environment that breeds a felon. An environment that breeds someone who would go out and look for a street fight to have fun or to deal with some other kind of deal with some kind of a repressed issue. I mean, I do want to go through this song line by line. So you say, "The city has drained me, and I don't know what I should do." Coming up in Hudson County, in the area that you were in, how did being surrounded by felons, being surrounded by people who had the lifestyles that they had, how did that drain you?
I mean, both of my parents were in and out of jail. I remember the hardest time of my childhood was when my mother was incarcerated. Because my mother was the provider. So when she was incarcerated, and I'll tell this story, she's rest her soul, but my mother was such a warrior that I'll never forget. She was incarcerated and she had to do, I think it was like a year or something. And she got herself out on work release. So basically she would go to work. She worked at Jordache Jeans for $1 a day. And then she'd go back to, prison or jail at the time. And she told me that, there was days where she'd be crossing the bridge to go back to the jail and she thought about jumping and like killing herself but long story short, my mother was actually smuggling heroin back into the jail through her vagina. Wow. And she was distributing it inside the jail so that she could survive and provide for us. So, most people can look at this like, what kind of woman is that? Like how could, but I look at it like, this is survival of the fittest here. So back to your question, when I say like the city has drained me, I think that it was just like my house, like the things I seen, like I started looking at them like they were normal. So now you're going out in society and you're like, hey, I watched my dad beat the shit out of my mom. I'm going to go outside and just beat the shit out of somebody if they don't agree with me. And you think that that's normal, that's your sense of normal.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, just because you think that is normal doesn't mean that that mindset doesn't have negative consequences on your health.
Of
you
course.
know, you're constantly in a fight or flight, survival of the fittest
Stressful,
mindset,
yeah.
constant stress, constant cortisol being pumped into your body.
Yeah.
That must, in a way that you might not even know, have seeped into every aspect of your health. You know?
I mean, yeah, I was so unhealthy, and I think the whole, you know, also where there's no money, in these communities, there's usually a lack of like education, and there's also like a lack, like my mother, who was like, she was a very open-minded individual. She was big into psychedelics and grew up in the rock and roll era, and she would always say, like, gotta eat vegetables, you know, like, gotta eat vegetables. So my mother actually like believed in vegetarianism and veganism. She didn't practice it always because she was product of her environment. She was born in 1955. But yeah, we were unhealthy, all of us. I mean, we were poor as shit. Like, to be honest. And again, I say this, poor in America. Because, I mean, you go to a third world country, we were rich as hell.
You weren't sleeping on a dirt floor.
Exactly. And that my mother used to say that to me. She'd say, don't, when we'd say, I don't got this, my mother would say, don't you go outside and complain about not having shoes when there's kids who don't have feet.
Yeah.
You know, so that's
a powerful
something
perspective
change.
change.
You know, something I thought of. But yeah, we were super unhealthy.
Yeah. And I mean, so, and also this environment, next line you say, these bones in my closet, I'll leave them for you. So I'm packing my bags and moving on to something new. What do you mean by the bones in your closet?
Skeletons.
Yeah.
Like,
what are the skeletons you've picked up?
You know, that line comes from me where I let go of insecurities. I used to be a guy who would like hide things. You know, I would hide about how I was, or I would make things up to cover up a situation. So at that point in my life, I was super like, I hit this point where I started experiencing like psychedelics in the right way. And medicinally. And I found this like thing where this is the story. I was trying to hook up with a girl who was extremely attractive. And we would talk, and she was so insecure. And I thought in my head, if she's insecure, we're all insecure. So I was like, you know what? You know what would be the good move here? To not be insecure anymore. So that was where that line came from. Like, these bones in my closet, I'll leave them for you, because it's like, I don't care like anymore. I'll tell you anything. Yeah. That's why before we started this episode, I really want you to ask me anything you really want to ask me, and I will never take offense, and I'll always answer it honestly, because
I mean, the bones are out of your closet now.
Let's do it. Let's get them out there. I mean, if it can empower one person to be secure with themselves and be, you know, your story is just as unique as mine and anyone else in the world. And I think we just need to be more open and talk about our experiences. And that's what makes these things like podcasts and they're just conversations. And it's awesome because we're losing touch of that, you know?
Yeah,
so
for sure.
That's what that line means to me. Let it all out, you know?
Yeah. What is something you've done in your past that you feel was the hardest thing for you to reconcile? Like something that you've done in your past that you look back now and you're like, I have no idea how I could have been in such a dark place to do something like that. And it feels so disparate, so foreign from who you are right now.
Sell drugs to people, actual drugs.
Yeah.
I sold drugs to one of my best friends one time, and he almost overdosed. He almost died. And I've had, you know, many friends overdose and die, not from drugs I sold them, but I've been in a situation, you know, just looking back on that, you know, watching my mom dead on the floor, like, you know, like you start thinking like, damn, man, I didn't give a shit.
You discovered your mom.
Yeah, I found, as I recorded Hudson County acoustically, that day she died when we finished the song. And so as I got out of the studio, I got a phone call that, you know, my mom might be dead. We think your mom's dead on the floor. My father called me. They were high. They were blasted. My mother intentionally, she was telling me she was going to kill herself for a long time. So, you know, it came to that point where it was her time to go. And what's crazy is people think oh wow, that must have affected you. It's great. She is alive now more than ever. And it's cool because if you've seen the video, she got to be in the video. She got to hear this. She loved it. And you know what? It's cool, man, to tell you this and to tell anybody who listens. When I always went back and forth on being a musician. I was like, you know, I knew it's what I wanted to do, but I'm like, oh, fuck the industry. It's phony. It's this, it's that. When I finally decided to do Ferentz and the Felons, I was going crazy. I knew I had to go back to music. So I would go to show my mom these new songs. Long story short, the EP's recorded, the video's done, it's out in the world. My mom dies and it solidifies like, I have to do this. There's no more like getting like, oh, I don't want to do this. I'm 100% in it. That's it. I'm in it for life. And I want to move past just being a musician and start, you know, motivationally speaking. And I would like to act and be in film. But, you know.
So this was kind of a symbol I really love is the lotus flower blooming out of mud, growing out of mud. So in a way, you know, your mom passing away gave birth to the lotus flower that is Ferentz and the Felons.
And she's alive now. See, I always think this way, and I thought this way one time when I was on LSD. I thought maybe we're already dead. Like maybe we're dead right now, and when we pass away, that's when the life really happens. Not that I don't want to say like we're dead, but like my mother is so alive right now. Like you think about it, as long as if you passed away physically tomorrow, I know you. So for the rest of my life, I would have that memory of you. I would be able to talk, and I could think of your mannerisms, and you'd be vivid in my mind. And I think that's what we need to do moving forward. When people pass away, and you know, a lot of people get in a slump. Oh my God, my father died, my mother died, my best friend. I think you really have to look at it like, no, it's okay. Like their physical died, you know,
but their imprint on reality will always be there.
It's still with you,
especially, you know, talking about people imprinting themselves onto the world and in a way that lives on past death. The internet, you know,
absolutely.
Like once you pass, your Facebook is still going to be there. All your social media handles don't get deleted. Your mother will always be in the beginning of that music video as long as YouTube exists.
Exactly.
You know, so she will always be alive in the sense that she's always kind of influencing you and influencing the world in general in a positive way that you had a huge part in kind of reviving her.
Yeah. And one of my favorite most of my favorite artists who passed away, Tom Petty. I remember younger, one of my first bands I ever got into was Nirvana. Kurt Cobain's been dead since 1994, but he's alive more than most people that are right now breathing. Yeah. Like he is more relevant because these people choose. This is another thing that's frustrating to me. People choose misery. I was once that person, but I mean, it gets to the point where it's like, you're working this job you hate. You went to school. I know that you have that similar mindset. When I saw you go, look at this like waste of like $80,000 piece of paper, this diploma. Yeah. It's this institution that's giving you this like piece of paper and telling you you're better than these other people. You've accomplished something. But in your mind, you're like, wait a minute, I was 18 years old. That's the prime time to get you to go to the military too, because it's like you don't know what that. Me at 18, it was the dumbest motherfucker on the planet.
You just want to do. You want to serve something.
You want to serve exactly. So I think that's wild too. Is like it's something that, again, I know I'm getting off topic, but it's something that frustrates me, and maybe that's what I saw. I saw the gentrification of my area, you know, with Hudson County, and I saw these, you know, what we call yuppies moving in, and these Wall Streeters, and they're very judgmental people, you know, and so as is anyone. But my point being, like, these are the people who go out and do cocaine all weekend, but then they look at you like, you know. Yeah.
So I mean, your mother lives on in so many beautiful ways, but heroin is the thing that took her. And so in terms of selling drugs being a dark thing and a dark hole to fall into, I had a friend who, you know, rest in peace, he passed away from a heroin overdose. Okay. And we actually went to Peru together and did ayahuasca together. Cool, he was there doing ayahuasca as his like kind of last ditch effort to get clean. And we sat together on a plane ride between Lima and Pucallpa, where our shaman was. And he was telling me all about his past. And he told me that he knew drug dealers, he knew heroin dealers that would purposely put like fentanyl or something deadly in a batch, purposefully kill someone, and then that would make everyone else who bought heroin from that guy think that he had the good stuff because it was so strong and so potent that someone died off of it. And that's what people wanted. So actually, if you killed someone as the result of the drugs that you sold, it was like an advertisement. And he got more customers. He sold more heroin because he killed someone. Not the friend that I'm talking about. He never sold heroin, but he was telling me this story, about someone he knew.
I believe it because my father used to say, "This shit out here is garbage." My father used to do drugs from people were shipping them back from Nam, and my father said, "You can't OD on this garbage out here. It's the shit they're putting in it." You know, that was the good thing about my parents doing drugs or abusing drugs. I've done cocaine and stuff like that. I hate it though. Like to the point now where like I will never do a drug, and I don't consider psilocybin a drug. I do not consider marijuana a drug. Those are medicinal
herbs.
Those are herbs, and when they're used properly, they're very beneficial. So those aren't drugs to me.
Yeah.
So I think my mother used to say the one good that came out of this is none of my kids are doing drugs, and it's true. It's great.
Well, the word drugs is such a silly word. You know,
McDonald's is drugs.
Exactly. And why should heroin and caffeine and psilocybin mushrooms be in the same ballpark at all?
Yeah, really.
You know, so it's just we're at a lack of language.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So
we speak a false language anyway. I mean, it's crazy to think about.
Yeah,
people
but I mean,
words so serious, right?
Yeah. But still, language is, I think, language is the most powerful thing we have. As flawed as it is. Like, I mean, this podcast, it's all about exploring with language. You know, language is the way we explore the things that you can't see with your eyes. You know,
it's cool because we
see with the intellect.
We just used language to energetically come to an understanding that you and I know that heroin and psilocybin are not in the same ballpark. So it's cool. I see what you're saying. Which is why I tell people don't take language so seriously. What I mean by that is like, you know, oh, you're saying the word fuck. You know, fornicate under consent of king. That's where this word comes from, or whatever. Fuck's the most useful word in the world. I mean, you could use fuck in a million different scenarios. I think that whole like bad word thing that pisses me off. You know, it's like, what's a bad word? I mean, you know,
something I like saying a lot. Like if I accidentally misspeak or like stumble over my words, but like you can still like understand what I mean. This happens at work a lot. I'll tell some students to like, oh, go do you know, push-ups on the bar or something like that. But I'll say sit-ups, but they know that that's the bar we do like push-ups under. And then they'll say to me, oh, but we do push-ups on that bar. And I'll say a lot, listen to what I mean, not what I say.
That's perfect.
Because like they know what I mean, but at the same time, I'm on my 9th hour of teaching, and it's like, okay, you just need to help me out and see what I mean, and not necessarily listen to what I say.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Because we don't necessarily, you know, language is a way of conveying meaning. You know, and when I'm listening to you talk, I'm not listening to your words as much as I am listening to your meaning.
Cool.
So when you say you sold before, when I asked you what the darkest part of your past was, when you said you sold drugs, like the bad kind.
I sold drugs.
I knew exactly what you meant. I knew you weren't selling mushrooms.
Sold things that can kill people.
Yeah, exactly.
Know? It's like me selling Skittles, you know?
Yeah,
those are killing people too.
Yeah. So the next line is my favorite line in this song, which is, these streets have raised me to never be food. And I love that because, I mean, for me, I think back to Axl Rose when he says, welcome to the jungle. We got you fun and games. It'll bring you to your knees. And I love this idea of So my background is in evolutionary psychology. That's
Cool.
what I studied in college. And in terms in evolutionary psychology in particular, it's useful to draw comparisons between the animal world and human psychology, because there is so much continuity between the way social animals organize themselves in nature and the way human beings organize themselves amongst each other. And so, you know, it's the dynamics of the jungle, and they're the same dynamics that arise in human society. There is a hierarchy, there are predators and prey, there are herds, there are lone wolves, there are parasites, as you can understand them symbolically, you know? So when you say these streets have raised me to never be food, I want to know, like, what were the predators and how did you stop yourself from being prey?
Yeah. I was just telling this to someone the other day. I fought because I was scared. I always tell people, like, they're like, oh, you always, you know, you were a fighter, you were aggressive. I had this motto where I was like, I'm swinging first because I'm not going to lose here.
Yeah, that's something I was thinking. Like, you probably, like, the way to not be food, the way to not be prey is to be a predator, you know?
And, you know, when people say, like, oh, this guy's a bitch or this guy's a punk, I've also been in situations where I've gotten, like, hooked in the face and didn't do anything about it. Because if I would have done something at that very moment, I would have gotten severely beat and or killed. So I knew strategically to get out of that exact situation, but that doesn't mean I'm not going to strike back. You see what I'm saying? So it's weird when people, like, you know, say, like, I remember there was a situation outside of my building where I got hooked by this kid, and long story short, I would have gotten, like, my ass handed to me by like 5 or 6 guys. So I knew to be like, all right, whatever, like, I'll take this hook and I'll strike when the time's right. But yeah, I guess I just looked at we looked at it very much, you know, in a very, like, animalistic way. You know, like they call the hood the concrete jungle.
Of course, yeah.
So
well, because you're trying to survive. And whenever you're trying to survive, you know, that's the name of the game in the jungle, survive, you know, and there are multiple ways of surviving, and there are multiple things that are trying to kill you at all times, you know?
Yeah, so that line's cool because I slipped, like, food in there and then fooled in there. So it was like, food's cool because it's for all, like, the homies that know, like, I'm not going to be I'm not going to be food. Like,
yeah.
You know,
and like, you know, with this line, you clearly don't mean these streets have raised you to never be eaten by cannibals. You know, there weren't cannibals running around Hudson County actually trying to eat you. No. You mean that purely
to, like,
symbolic.
eat your soul, you know, to, like, to take like a part of you that you didn't want to lose, you know. It all goes back to, like, the songs, you know. Now that it's cool because you're dissecting the song. Now that I'm, like, thinking about the lyrics a lot, it's very much about a person not wanting to lose themselves to their environment. You know, I didn't want to be a product of my environment. I hated that. But I'm very glad and fortunate that I did grow up in it because it's made me a very social person. It's got me far in life. You know, it got me to the point where I could provide for myself, and I don't have any addictions outside of probably, you know, sugar, which we're all addicted to. But I mean, you know, yeah, that line's cool. I think that's the coolest.
It's one of your
line.
most optimistic lines, about looking back on quote unquote Hudson County.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, because I mean, drug dealers are clearly predators.
Absolutely.
You know,
women for me
are the predators,
and I've been the predator for them. Meaning not in a way where it's like, yo, this girl's into me, I could take advantage of the situation. She has an apartment, she has this, she has that. I dated one girl because she had a car, and I would, like, legitimately like use her for her car.
Yeah,
and
because you didn't have a car.
But I didn't have a car. But then there were, like, times where, like, I had something, like, I sold, let's say, weed.
Yeah.
And girls wanted to smoke, so maybe a girl will hook up with me or whatever. So there's times where it's like, you know, you could be, I guess that's what I mean about the line. Like, you know, in this life, you just don't want to be taken advantage of.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you have to be, in a sense, to understand what it means.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in environments where pretty much everyone is living in a state of scarcity, where everyone feels like they don't have enough. And in a lot of ways, they literally, you know, your mom might have said, you know, you might not have shoes, but at least you have feet or something like that. You still, when you go to sleep with an empty stomach, it doesn't matter what kids on the other side of the world are feeling.
No, because now it's mental.
Because now the only thing you care about is your hunger, you know?
Yeah.
So that scarcity, I think, breeds a lot of the jungle dynamics in these areas where you become a predator when you're hungry, you know?
There's this one part of my childhood that always replays in my head that's bad, but I look at it, the positive out of it. And it was, my father was like always in and out or whatever, but my mother said, she said like one day we were all there and we were broke. I mean, getting evicted, like, and my mother was screaming and she was going, when are these kids going to eat, Paul? That's my dad's name. And my dad said, they'll eat tomorrow. And I just remember, like, that's where I looked at him like, this guy's a coward. Like, that would never occur with me. Like, if I had children, I would go out and do whatever I had to do to provide for them. So I you know, that was where a lot of the issues stem from in this song too, was my father, because I looked at him like, you're not the man that I think is what a man should be. But later in life, I understand he's had his demons too. So we've
yeah. I mean, something I also just reminded now of something I wanted to bring up to you. What is it that, you know, sometimes when people grow up with a very harsh childhood, and when they have kids, they want to put their kids through the same hell that they went through, you know? But then there are other parents who go, I want to make sure my kids have such a better life than I did. And what causes the transfer from, I had this hell when I was growing up, so you're going to as well, kid, to I had a hell when I was growing up, so now I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure you grow up in heaven. Yeah. You know, what causes that difference, or what causes someone to want to perpetuate the cycles of pathology, and what makes someone want to step out of those cycles?
So I'm torn on that. That's why I don't want to have kids, because I'm legitimately torn on what you just said, which is an amazing question. It's a question I ask myself every time I think about having a child. I don't know what I would do, because part of me would want to, say, get the fuck out there and go get your ass handed to you a couple times. Yeah. My mother used to say, I don't trust a human who's never been punched in the face. She would say that because there's this feeling when you get punched in the face where your brain rattles and you get shocked and you're like, whoa. Like,
that's reality.
Mike Tyson said, one of my favorite quotes ever, everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face. And it's like, it's true. So I battle with that. Would I want to be this father who's like, I want to shelter my child from this? No, because in a way I see the kids that got sheltered and how they turned out, and a lot of times they don't know about the real world, and the real world is a crazy place. I mean, we're in New York City right now having a conversation. You got a guy that works on Wall Street downstairs looking to buy Coke, and you got a guy begging for change on the corner. And you got all this different shit going on. You got to be prepared for it.
So then there's a calculation there, meaning that, you don't want to shelter your kids so much so that they're just these frail, pathetic beings when they become adults who don't know how to handle the world and don't know how to understand that they're not always going to get everything that they want, and not everyone will always treat them how they feel they need to be treated, but at the same time, I guess the example that I was thinking of is like a parent who would beat the shit out of their child because they got the shit beat out of them. You know, I think specifically, it's a very blurry line in terms of what helps you develop, because a lot of people who have had very dark pasts grow to be the most amazing people and the most interesting people. I think you're a good example of that.
Appreciate that.
But then you know, you don't want to just get the shit beat out of you when you're a kid, because that doesn't necessarily lead to good outcomes when you're an adult. You learn to associate fear and love, and that can easily put you into a state where you're more disposed to getting into an abusive relationship.
Oh, absolutely.
Because you associate
because
the abuse with love.
Yeah, that relationship with your parent was abusive, and there's love there. So I want to put a little like PSA out here on the podcast and say that, please, like anyone listening, the biggest decision you could ever make in your life is to have a child. Mm-hmm. That's what I always tell people. And I am not ready for that. Therefore, I will do everything in my power. I've been dating the same girl for 5 years, and I still use a condom because I don't care if she tells me she's on birth control. I do not want to bring a child into this world when I know I am not fully developed mentally, and I can't answer the question you just asked me.
Yeah. How do you break that cycle?
So I think it's like you really have to think, and you really have to take sex serious, and you can't just like, the things I've done that I've gotten away with, I'm so thankful for. Mm-hmm. But you know, anyone listening, especially to the younger, you know, if anyone younger is listening, like, just be careful who you're sleeping with, you know, or be careful with the decisions you make ultimately.
Because a child is another human being that you're completely responsible for. You and all of your flaws and your incapabilities and all your pathetic shortcomings, you are responsible for that child. And also, you know, when people say that, I push back and say, no one's ever ready to have a kid.
No one
is. No, we're all still kids in some way. We're just a bunch of kids having kids.
Yep.
And we're just, every single human being is doing their best to figure their way through this crazy dimension that we've been launched into. But at the same time, you can optimize your state of being in such a way that will give children a sense of safety and love, unconditional love and certainty. But at the same time, you're not going to ever be at a place where you're going to be able to raise kids without them seeing the darkness of the world.
And they need that.
And they need to see the darkness.
I guess the best way to put it is take Tyler's question and really think about it. And when you can answer that question, maybe you're ready to have a child.
Yeah.
For me, I can't.
Yeah.
So I'm not ready. And because of that, I want to be as responsible as I can and not put something on this earth that I'm not ready to take care of.
Yeah, man. So let's keep going through the song. Your people are crazy and I'm not amused. I'm tired of wasting away all alone in this tomb. I think you really hit on everything. Everyone you grew up with were felons, and
we're all crazy.
We're all crazy. And, being, I'm tired of wasting away all alone in this tomb. It's kind of like Eminem saying, I will not grow old in Salem's lot. Here goes my shot.
Which, by the way, you made two references that makes me love you more. Guns N' Roses is one of my favorite bands.
Oh, yeah. Nice.
And Welcome to the Jungle is actually about Axl going up to Harlem to cop. And this kid ran up to him and said, do you know where you are? You're in the jungle, baby. You're going to die. So that whole song is actually about him going into this sketchy...
Really? Yeah. I thought it was about a young girl going to L.A. who wanted to be a actress. Or maybe that's what it's about. But then I think he draws comparison in one of the lyrics where he talks about a female.
So I was convinced, from to my knowledge, I've heard the story of that's what that song was about.
Yeah.
Because a kid ran up and said that in a situation where he was like going to get drugs or something. Yeah. Maybe he used both. And
the dynamics of the jungle to talk about.
If Axl Rose ever wants to have this conversation with me, I'll have to have it with him. But side note, you also just brought up Eminem. And let me just say something. Eminem is one of the biggest artists in the world for the right reason. As a kid, and I hate race is so stupid to me, but I understand that people have been oppressed for the color of their skin, and I will never take that from those people. And I want them to, I want equality across the board. But I grew up in an area where, being white, I guess if you want to even call it that, we were the minority. And Eminem blowing up in that scene was like, holy shit. us trailer trash or project trash.
Yeah.
This guy is the voice.
Yeah.
And when Lose Yourself hit, I never forget, like, I'll never forget it being like, wow, this is like, everyone's like, this is a sellout song. That song, I've had tears in my eyes listening to that song. Because it's like, that guy, like, he manifests destiny, man. Mm-hmm. He says it, and the line that always gets me,
and he articulates it so well.
When he goes, there's these goddamn food stamps won't buy diapers. Because I remember being a kid and my mom would make us, we would use the deli and they would actually they'd give us cash back on the food stamps so she could buy like drugs or cigarettes. But I just remember that line and being like, dude, I'm this guy. He goes, I got to formulate a plot.
Yeah.
Before I end up in jail or shot. Like, it's like, dude, he said everything. And you know what? He said it for everyone, no matter what color you are. But it was just crazy to see a guy like this white, blonde haired weirdo. Yeah. Which is what he is.
Yeah.
Well, I'm a fucking weirdo too. And because of that, Eminem is automatically a legend. And you put him up with these like huge MCs.
Yeah. Because he came out of this kind of pathological place, a place that the heart in his chest wouldn't lead him to, which is the next line in the song. This heart in my chest won't lead me to you. It's like, your intuition, your internal drive isn't going to lead you into these like past cycles and these past environments. It's like you always had that kind of seed of potential inside of you, like kind of driving you away from this lifestyle. Yeah. Which is something you're probably just blessed with,
Yeah, I'm very grateful because I have a lot of friends and even family who are still just swimming, they're still fighting.
Yeah.
To get out.
Yeah, man. And, so, I mean, then you say these streets have raised me to never be fooled. I think that's very similar to food because I mean,
they go hand in hand.
They go hand in hand because the predator will fool their prey into thinking one thing so they can eat them at the next moment. And, now you're feeling like maybe I'm crazy. Maybe it's true. I can't imagine like how much you questioned yourself.
I'm fucking crazy.
So it's not a maybe. So it should be,
crazy.
I'm crazy. It's true.
It's true. Because I thought about it. Like I'm the way I think we're all crazy. And I think that that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
And I'm finally happy to say that I'm not, I'm crazy in the most positive way,
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I'm out there, man. I like being out there. I like being a weirdo.
All creative people especially are crazy.
Yeah, I'm a weird guy. I do everything like a little bit different.
Yeah. And so then you say, but this city has played me and I feel confused. And I think that's an interesting line because, when you get out of an abusive relationship, and I've had experiences with this too, because I had a relationship that I feel was very subtly abusive, cool. With this, with a partner. And
I say cool. Like
cool.
Cool, it is cool because you got out of it.
Yeah, exactly. But something that, I remember getting out of that relationship, seeing the effects that it had on me and the main effect of the kind of abuse in that relationship was I just felt so confused. I felt so confused about who I was, what I wanted. I felt so but it was like a sense of indecision that spilled into all aspects of my life. And what is it about an abusive relationship that leaves you confused?
I've been the problem in a relationship. I think that's where that line came from. Like,
while simultaneously trying to think that you're not the problem.
The city has played me because, I mean, let's face it, life's like a movie. It's playing. And I got played a bunch, on the street by people, by women. And I felt confused because I've also played people too. I've also played back. I played the game.
Don't hate the player, hate the game.
I guess I always say don't hate the player and don't hate the game. Just realize that there is a game and you got to be a player at times. Like it's cool. Yeah, it's a cool way to look at it. I've been a problem in relationships, even with women where I was not the best. And that honestly, that was the hardest. That was like the straw that broke the camel's back was getting out of a relationship where I was mentally and psychologically abusive to someone. And finally just being able to recognize that and forgive myself, you know, for putting someone through such torture. So yeah, I guess I could say like that left me confused. And then I was, but also what I'm saying there is like this city played me.
Yeah.
This whole environment fucked me up to the point where I'm becoming this like thing I hate.
You don't know what the ideal mode of being is anymore, because sometimes people around you, like when you're growing up in that area, the ideal, the hero is the dude who made the most amount of money selling drugs, or who played the most amount of people to get some kind of like vain reward that was valued in that system.
Let me ask you a question. You're ever in a state of confusion, or you're, like you said, you come out of a toxic relationship and you talk to yourself, you're like talking out loud, and it's the best therapy. There was a time where I looked in the mirror and I was like, looked at myself and I told myself, you're becoming the person you always wanted to kill. Like I was becoming the person that I hated, you know, just, you know, and it took me to say that, like to myself, to say it out loud. That's why when people say, oh, this guy's crazy, he's talking to himself. Like, dude, I have more conversations with myself. There's a line by Bob Dylan. I'm a Bob Dylan guy, but there's a line where he said, he goes, if my thought crimes could be seen, they'd put my head in a guillotine. And, you know,
we're all there.
Yeah, we're all there. And I think that's what I think. I think we need to, you know, be more open. And I appreciate you doing something like this. And first off, just taking the time to like dissect a piece of art that I made that I honestly haven't thought this deep about, you know, like I think that that's awesome. And I know that when I met you, I just want to say, side note, when I met you, I immediately felt comfortable, and I immediately felt like amazing energy from you and everybody, like your girlfriend too, and or whatever you want to call her, your partner. But Alexa, everyone, girlfriend, you know, everyone does a different thing. But everyone at the at Cosm, even Alex and his wife are so like, he's Alex Gray, you know. Like there was a time in my life where I put this guy on a pedestal, and it was crazy because when I performed there the first time, he like turned and was like, "That was my favorite performance ever at Cosm," and I'm like, dude, you're Alex Gray. Well, for him to say that was like, holy shit, like this guy is at level ground. He has no ego.
He really is one of the most like genuine people.
He has, to say that to like me, he has no ego.
Well, that's why I think Cosm is a social bubble that I've always found myself drawn to. You know, I volunteered there for 2 years before I started dating a girl who works there. You know, and I think that there's just it's important to find these places where everyone is living heart first, you know, and I think living in a very genuine way, because Cosm is a place where they are trying to create a space for people to be creative, and to be in a creative state is to be in a vulnerable state. You know, so you need to hold space for people if they're gonna feel like they're gonna be comfortable taking their insides and putting it outside. That's what creativity is all about.
I got to send you something. I just played in Pittsburgh, and on the wall they had 2 paintings of Alex Gray. I got to send them to you. And maybe it can get to Alex, but it was cool because they had all these like influential artists, like paintings of them. And you know the picture of Alex where his head's down, it's black and white. He uses it for like his Instagram. That there was 2 of like they had everyone on the wall, and then there was 2 of Alex Gray, and I'm like, that's amazing. Like, and but like I said, for someone like him to be so humble and to give me a compliment like that, it reminded me that like in art we're all equal, and he is like, you know. He's someone that pushed me forward, and I would definitely always tell him that and thank him for the compliment.
That gets me to what I wanted to ask you last is, you know, your last few lines is, Hudson County, I'm leaving you. Maybe I'm crazy, maybe it's true, but this city has played me, and now I'm leaving you. And I think that one of the primary ways that you are, quote unquote, leaving Hudson County is through your creativity, through your music.
Absolutely.
And I just, maybe we should close this just by, I want to ask you, what role has creativity and creative expression played in your ability to climb out of the darkness of your past and transcend it and become who you are now?
I'm going to think deep about that and give you the best answer. Without music, I wouldn't want to live on this planet. Without art, without creation, right before I started Felons, I was psychotic. I was going right back to where I was at. What I mean from this song, Blanco's sitting here, one of my best friends. I mean, he knows like music's so important to me. If I didn't have creation, I wouldn't want to exist, and that's a world I don't want to live in, and I mean it. So, what
is it about creation that makes life so worthwhile?
Because it's my self-expression, and I think the thing about creation is, you find like-minded people, and you think of what this creation did. It made me, you and I have a conversation, and it brought us together and created a friendship and a bond. And again, something like art brings two people together. And if you ever needed me, you could text me and say, "Hey, Zach, man, I'm down in the dumps." I would drop what I was doing and I would answer you, and we would be able to have this conversation, and I would tell you, "Hey, man, like, what are you doing wrong? What's going on here?" And I think that's all because of creation. I think
our creative expression kind of brought us together.
It, man. It did. It did. You came out to the shows, you supported, and I'll never forget that. And even getting me into Cosm and, having me play there was just like a little milestone. I always wanted to go to Cosm. I went and I was able to play there. And
then Alex tells you that you're his favorite performance ever at Cosm.
I don't even care if he said that to everyone that's ever performed there. He said it to me.
Yeah, I've never heard that he said that before.
But he did say it to me. I'm not making this up.
Something that is amazing about your performance at Cosm is that you brought up that your mother died on June 3rd.
Yes.
And June 3rd is an important date for Alex and Allison because that's the date of a psychedelic experience they had where they dissolved into what they called the universal mind lattice, which is one of the sacred mirrors.
Yes, yeah.
Which is this kind of other dimension that exists parallel to this one, wherein we are all connected in this net. And of course, it's like this unlanguageable thing. But the day your mother died is the same date that Alex and Allison experienced this thing beyond, and Alex said that was a really amazing parallel. And he's like, maybe she passed, on that day purposefully, to go into that next state beyond, to go into the universal mind lattice.
And I bought her a picture of the Cosm Christ, and she framed it, and she actually died under it.
Yeah.
So I was able to tell Alex that, and we had that conversation. And my mother was a big believer, and she loved Alex Gray. She loved Beastie Boys, and so she knew who Alex Gray was in Tool. So it was, it was awesome. And again, man, see, there's what creation did. It brought us all together, and it gave us a moment like that. And that moment keeps me from killing myself, and that moment keeps me from hurting people, and it keeps me positive and wanting to push forward. And I just want to say thank you for taking the time to have me on, as if, I'm just another person on this planet with some ideas,
Well, dude, I think that, you're really interesting to me because you are, out of anyone I think I've ever met, you're the best symbol for transcending and integrating the shadow in a Jungian perspective, where you kind of have this dark past and these things that you've experienced that are outside the realm of most other human experiences, but not only have you kind of transcended the place that you've been, but you're not just repelling it, you're not just repelling yourself away from it, you've integrated the darkness of your past, and you've integrated that into your creativity and your creative process and your creative expression. And I think that that's such a beautiful thing. It's like you are the lotus flower growing out of mud. And thanks for being that, man. It's a beacon of light for a lot of people.
Yeah, I just want to say shout out to a good friend of mine. His name is Anthony Toto. He's a music journalist. I sent him the new record. I'll send it to you too, but it's not coming out for a while. So it's just for your ears. But he always says to me, he's like, man, thank you for being so transparent. That's the word like he used for me. And it's cool for you to say that, again, it's like, you know what, man, I guess that's me figuring out what I am, and I appreciate it. And I'm going to embrace that and push forward and just constantly be as transparent as possible in hopes to, enlighten other people to let go of these demons and these insecurities. So again, man, thank you.
Yeah,
dude, it was a pleasure. And I'm super happy with that you're doing this too. Cause I think you're great. And I think that you're going to have an amazing podcast. And this is something I hope that you keep pushing, because you're excellent at it and you took the time. And I like the idea of this one piece of art because it created a really cool conversation.
Yeah, it allowed us to go deep under the iceberg.
There you go, man. That's
and
what we're
with
doing.
that, the iceberg has been lifted.
It's lifted. All right,
dude,
man.
Zak, thanks a lot for supporting, man, and being on. I appreciate it. Let's do it again
Anytime,
sometime.
man. Definitely.
Peace out.
Peace out.
Bye, everybody. Thanks again for listening to the Lifting the Iceberg podcast. You can find out more about Zak by searching Ferentz and the Felons on Facebook, Instagram, Spotify, iTunes, or anywhere you get your music. Thank you to Kerusu for the soundtrack Stay With Me. You can find out more about Kerusu on Spotify, SoundCloud, and Facebook. Thank you to Alexa Spaddy for designing the graphics for this podcast. You can find out more about her at alexaspaddy.com. Be sure to check out her shop where she has posters and stickers for sale. And thank you for listening to the podcast and coming along for the ride and going deep underneath the iceberg.